Welcome everyone, I'm Ben Dreith. I am the US editor for Dezeen. See some familiar faces, thanks so much for stopping by. I have a bunch of really brilliant, amazing people with me today, and we're just gonna have a conversation. We'll be doing this every day. Dezeen is hosting some open conversations from noon onwards, so thanks for stopping by. We know it's a busy fair. We sit on some comfortable furniture. Looks like you guys are all settled in, so we'll get started with the talk. I just wanted to thank ICFF and Swanson for having us, and Canoa for designing this lounge. It looks amazing, and yeah, I'm just going to let everyone introduce themselves, tell you who they are a bit, and then we're going to hop into it. The purpose of these are to be a bit open format, so afterwards we're going to let people ask some questions so we can have, some conversations and, get everyone involved. So we're going to start here, and we'll just go down the line. Is that all right? Yeah, you're sitting right here, so.
Great. Hey everyone, my name's Anand Sheth. I have a studio called Studio Anand Sheth, and I'm an architect based in California and also licensed here in New York, offices in San Francisco and a satellite in LA and in New York. And I work on architecture and interiors and furniture, and here's one of my pieces. I'm excited to chat with y'all.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kate Swanson. I'm the founder of Fletcher Road in Burlington, Vermont. I'm an interior architect and designer, and I'm very excited to be here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Petrus Palmer. I'm the founder and CEO of Hem, a furniture brand. Some of our pieces are here, like the puffy chair, the funky boa, donut over here, some of the smaller pieces. So we're a Stockholm-based design company, but operating mainly here in the US.
Thank you. Can you guys hear us okay? Yeah, okay. My name is Federico. I am the founder of Canoa. I'm a designer by training. I'm an architect by training, but I've been, focused on the tooling of design or software for designers most of my career. And excited to be here. Ben?
Thanks so much. So we're here to talk about habits, and obviously you guys are all covering kind of a wide range of the various aspects of the design world. I think for Fed, since you are creating tools for designers, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about how you're kind of learning about people's habits and how they're working and how you cater to that, right? Is there a certain method that you use in order to understand kind of the breadth of it? How do you go about understanding what people need when they're designing?
Yeah, so the whole, maybe it's worthwhile to take a little bit of a step back and talk about how Canoa actually came about. I had started a company in my mid-20s that was also focused on technology for designers, but we were doing a lot of, building on technology that already existed. So on top of SketchUp and Revit and AutoCAD and all of these kinds of things. And then that company ended up getting bought, and I ended up doing a bunch of retrofit work, a lot of interior work, and for years. And as we were doing that, in a very clear way, a lot of the the limitations of the tools that we were using, especially at the interior space, just became super clear again. So I had practiced for a bit, and it reminded me of how much how limited in many ways our tools were. And so when I left that, I decided we have a clear room here to do something better. Since then, since we started the company, of course, engaging with the community, interviews, all of those kinds of things are fundamental, to getting to that sort of new way of designing. I would say there's probably one of the most important bits has been the pandemic. I think the way that we used to design before was sort of studio first, we were in the studio and then we would sort of cohabitate or co-locate with the studio environment. And then since then, many of our users and many of the people we talk to have really switched to move online, and they're designing online mainly. And the studio ends up being, let's say, an attachment to the online experience as opposed to the opposite. I think that's maybe a big change. It used to be that the online experience was an attachment to the studio, and that relationship is flipped. So we try to learn a lot about how that new paradigm actually changes what we do every day, what we can and cannot rely on, designing without printers, like all of these things, like all of these resources that we used to have that maybe we don't have anymore.
I was wondering then, maybe since we were having kind of a mic pass down the line, then just on that note, if any of you guys want to elaborate just on what Fed brought up about, design first, studio first, and with using digital tools.
Sure. Well, I started my studio about 9 months after COVID started. I quit my 10-year job and started a practice from home and tried to make a brand online and interact with people in ways that were not in person. And it was obviously a huge shift to the studio experience that I had grown accustomed to and also was using as a precedent, right? Was using as this marker of whether I was doing the right thing or if I was off track, and letting go of that, letting go of the sort of ingrained desire to have a big conference table and 12, 20-year-olds clicking away allowed me to just sort of open up what my practice could be and and work with designers who are remote to me and who live here or in LA or in San Francisco or in Florida and kind of all over and contract and collaborate online, which I thought I knew how to do until I was sort of left without that other option to be in person. So habits shifted. It really is, like Fed said, a kind of 180, but it's also, now that we've all grown accustomed to working online, it's this question or opportunity to figure out how to maintain the safety of a studio space or the vulnerability you feel when you're in progress on something, and that's sort of the ongoing challenge. I think the habits for me have shifted in that I'm focused more on that than I ever was. It's not a given.
Yeah, I think a lot about where I spend my time and attention. I have a similar story. I think a lot of us do with COVID and going out on your own. The woman I worked for in Jackson Hole actually closed the business, offered to sell it to me the week before COVID was announced, and then closed the business a couple weeks in. So I kind of had a head start with a couple things, but with that came an overload of work and kind of a lack of focus from me. And then over time, I kind of regained, my authenticity, honestly, and like my taste and my interest, and had to actually create a practice around realizing what I actually liked, because I felt almost over-influenced by everything. So now I have this space that kind of lives between reality, being in person in my studio, working with things that are more artistically focused, like collage and clay and hand drawing, and I kind of force myself to reconnect with those things. And then using a program like Canoa that's kind of malleable as my digital interaction. And I really try to spend time on that tension between those two things, and making sure that I'm not getting distracted, even though I probably constantly am. So that's where I live now. That's kind of my spot.
Well, I'm not actually designing an interior, so I think I have to take this from a different perspective. But what we do is design furniture and try to get it to people like us here in this panel. But we were born online. We started in 2016 as a D2C brand, and then over time it graduated into more of a omni-channel, contract, wholesale, quite a few of the traditional channels. But it's always been that kind of beginning of everything is accessible, everybody can be communicated with. Even though we're in Stockholm and we have our studio in New York and the one in LA and we have people in San Francisco, it's never been a border that we've always been able to talk to them in a pretty easy way. And I think what struck me when you guys talked about your practices is that we've designed products continuously over the years, the last couple of years, the pandemic years, but without actually meeting these designers. And it's never been a problem. I mean, you can always find a way to communicate. But the one thing that I've always kind of, and it struck me when you said that, it's like the one thing that cannot be replaced is the materiality. And I haven't been to this fair for a couple of years, and I haven't been to trade shows at all for a couple of years because they weren't existing. And then the more you kind of stay away from it, the more you realize that the tactility, the in-person dialogue, I mean, you can't replace that, right? But everything else can be replaced. So I think it's, like you said, it's flipped. Like, it's now driven by the easy communication and the easy way of doing business. But then we now have such an urge for all this tactility that, you know, I love. That's why I got into it in the first place. Like the tactility of the materials, but also the interpersonal dialogues. So I think that I like that. It's like it's flipped now.
Thanks so much, everybody. I want to focus too, and I'll ask kind of a dual question here, just so we can pass it. But I was at your showroom in Soho, Petrus, and it was an amazing party the other night, and you know, it was really nice to see everyone together. So there obviously is like this massive social dimension that is, you know, we can't get rid of it. We've seen that, right? Like it's super important. I think going to parties is important, you know, like just being around people. It is, you know, we don't talk about it enough. And then, Anand, you're also a curator. So I was hoping, and then that's obviously like bringing people together, and this is on top of your design practice as well. So just as far as this social dimension goes, or kind of like a attached thing, right? And I don't know how you do it, honestly, because it seems like you have to have 48 hours in the day or something, right? So I was hoping maybe just from a social dimension, whether it's kind of hosting events and like the importance of that, or like something extra like curating, how do you know, work your day job, or, you know, the bringing home the bacon, and then also like find time to make sure that these attached things that are super important are happening and passionate. I'd love to also just hear about the vessel as well.
Yeah, it's a challenge to balance lots of different types of work. You know, I think that's really a challenge that I was excited about when I started my studio, because even though I studied architecture and it became licensed and was working primarily in that world, a lot of the kind of output of my work was really in the interior design and furniture and art space. And it was hard, actually, as an architect to bridge that gap, because I think that maybe I had my own preconceived notions, but there was a sort of feeling of a divide of like technical code and capital A architecture. In a small practice, you know, if you don't design the biggest buildings, then what are you really, where is your impact really, especially in today's world where so much of our cities are developed. And so leaning into interiors was natural to create impact for the users of the spaces I was creating. And then furniture became, you know, sort of a natural next step. So the way I sort of navigate working on multiple disciplines is kind of maybe breaking down the hierarchies that I was trained to believe in architecture school, and letting, you know, the discipline that makes the most impact take priority. And right now for me, that is curating this art show in San Francisco and in LA. It's a traveling show, and it's composed of artists who are rooted in the Bay Area, so not everyone lives there full time. And it's really this kind of new experience that I've been feeling in the last couple years, moving between here and California, where my city isn't really the first part of my identity anymore, and even though it's really important to me. And so I wanted to feature artists who experience that as well in various forms. And I'm actually using Canoa's canvas to interact with the artists. So they're so they're learning a new tool while making a work of art in a short amount of time, and we get to exhibit not only their artwork, but their process and them as people through the art shows in San Francisco and LA. So yes, answering your question, it's all related to me, so I don't feel like I'm changing direction when I'm working on a new sort of facet of my design work. I think I was pleasantly surprised to feel how fluid it is between these disciplines and really just focus on what makes an impact in the moment. That's my strategy.
Oh, yeah. Vessel's incredible. Everything I see, I'm speechless. It's incredible to see, honestly, on Instagram. Vermont's an interesting place to be. I grew up there, but coming home there has been an evolution, I would say. I don't think it has a very defined design identity, and it's also okay with that, honestly. Something that I kind of thrive on is these kind of conversations with people that I either grew up with, honestly, in that area, or new people. And there's just a lot of kind of underground brewing creatives in that space, and I find a lot of inspiration in conversations I have with those people, and kind of that energy that is created. And we were talking earlier about process and kind of inviting different people into your process in the middle of it. So I work out of a building that has several creatives and that are practicing professionally, and we all kind of go into each other's studios in the middle of our work and nicely pick it apart and invite new ideas. So I think there's a lot of possibility. I don't know if I have the stamina of something like Vessel, but I do. I think there's just a lot of crossover happening and a lot of really beautiful things being created, like over all kind of practices. So we'll see what happens in the future. But yeah, it's great.
So, your question was about the social overlay onto practice. Our perspective is, of course, very different. We're a software company, which is something that you don't really think about what that social component needs to be. But what's really interesting, I would say, is that building a software in the design space requires that tactility. It requires that sort of attention. It requires all of that. We as designers, we're super finicky. If it's not perfect, if it's not fast, if it's not all of those things, then we're just simply not going to use the tool. It's not going to get there. And of course, it's really hard to do a lot of those things. And so as you continue to build toward that objective, that's a design process too. And the design process is dependent upon going out and getting that feedback and getting it in front of people and doing the crits and the pinups and all of those kinds of things, and you just do it in a different way. And so we very much approach, I think, software design as we would a design project. And so we have Alma, who put together the space. She leads our community. We're constantly trying to build that feedback loop, because for us is everything. It's how we move our project forward. And without that constant, you could call it friction, but really it's more it's traction. Like without being able to grab onto it, you can't pull yourself forward. You can't pull yourself forward. So that component for us is a big deal. And in a way, even this panel, I think, is interesting. Like, you built you're probably one of the first natively online big furniture company. I can call you big now, right? I think we could say yes. But from the West Coast through Vermont to Stockholm, even us being based here in Brooklyn in New York, this is even a form of community that today I think is enabled. That today it's easier to do. That a few years ago, I think 10 years prior would have been really difficult for you guys to crack into the U.S. market in the way that you would have done. And so being, all of this kind of stuff is a double-edged sword. It can be really good. It can also hinder, I think, but it's really important. The social component is fundamental.
No, and I can add to that, and I think what's so good about what's kind of happened in the last decade or so is that all these tools is just making it easier for us, and so we can focus on being humans, right? I spoke to someone last night at an event, and they were a design student just graduating, and they said that their whole class was terrified because of AI. And I know you do some AI with Canoa, so maybe they're afraid of you, I don't know, but no, I think the idea of AI actually taking things from us is just stupid. I mean, everything is here to enable us humans. I mean, everything I'm passionate about is connected to a human. I mean, I love Faye Toogood. She designed this chair for us. If a robot designed that chair, I wouldn't care. If it's the most beautiful chair in the world, I wouldn't care. I want that personal, like, who are you? What's your background? Where do you come from? You're from Vermont. I think that's super exciting that there's a place that I haven't been to and that's colored you and the way you design things. And that's what you bring into your design, whether it's interior design or it's product, and you have your story. I mean, that's what I want to know. And then these tools and what you're doing with your tool is enabling all of that, and it's enabling us all to focus on what's important. And I have this newfound rant that I'm keep coming back to, and I think we've over-indexed on so much efficiency over the years. Like, there's so many decades now of just making things more efficient, faster, cheaper, and so in the end, everything is available to everybody. But now what? Like, everybody has, at least in the West, in the developed markets, we have what we need. Everybody's got a dishwasher. Everybody has got, a chair to sit on. We don't need more of it. But we're cultural beings. We always need to relate to each other. We need to be, we're going to produce things, whether it's music or furniture or design. We're always going to do that. So let's focus on what's actually touching us. Let's over-index on the emotional side instead of the efficiency. But that's only possible if we can communicate globally and have all these tools. So that's why I'm looking forward to all the kind of actual materiality and the meetings and what we're all passionate about. That's my rant.
I think you're right that we have over-indexed on efficiency, but I still talk to younger designers and architects, and everyone is still like burnt out all the time. Like, we still work a ton, and I guess, there's two questions here, and I think we can think about it is, especially with, you talked earlier about like kind of the identity alongside the design, but I do think it is kind of labor too, like putting your face on something and like tying up your being with your work, right? Like, that is sort of, it's taxing, I think, in a way, right? Because they're always working, and then with the efficiency, like, I guess I'm interested maybe to, like, for those of you who have teams or lead teams, like, how do then we let people know that, okay, these tools exist, things can be easier, but then, like, shouldn't that mean that we are creating sort of models and being role models for people who are working under us or with us, or like view us as role models to like maybe not work so much, and like take care of themselves. So I guess the question is two-pronged insofar as how do you take a break, right, and care for yourself and be like, okay, we have this brilliant technology, and it should be working for us, and that should also mean that, sure, community, like, is a nice thing to focus on, but we should also be focusing on health and, and mental health as well. So how do you take care of that? And then also, how do you express to people who are working for you or, that you're working close with, that they also shouldn't be burning out, right? Like, it's 2024, we have, artificial intelligence, right? But we're still having this problem, I think, right? Especially maybe not so much in Europe in a certain way, but definitely here in the U.S. We work too much, I think. But I think my bosses are still here. But anyway, So just So either just like how you take care of yourself or how you take care of your people. I'm interested to hear.
I'm not the role model on that. I'm not the role model on that. But I do think that a byproduct of the structure I've built for my company, which is kind of inspired by freelance workers and other industries where my employees are contract and hourly and have other jobs, has proven to have its own set of difficulties for sure, but still the better option for me. And it also gives them an opportunity to inspire me. Like, I'll be cranking on a deadline and ask for support, and my junior designer will be in Prague, and I'm like, I should go to Prague, So letting them have their, inviting people who have already chosen a sense of flexibility and freedom to work alongside me has added a lot to my sort of perspective of what proportion of my time needs to be pre-committed, but also working on the go, which is not everyone's favorite, but I took a 6-hour flight here and I got a lot done, So choosing those moments it is also important so that I'm not staying up all night or, creating the structure and tools and kind of organization of my schedule to prioritize those moments where I am kind of sitting still and able to commit to something has added a lot as well.
Yeah, I do a similar thing with support with subcontract workers. My biggest thing is that I want people to feel like they have ownership over the work that they're doing. So I talk to people that are either in an adjacent industry or have a really strong interest in finding antiques, for example, and maybe subcontract them for a project-by-project base. I also, when it comes to taking care of myself, I think I kind of learned what my capacity is and also where my creativity thrives. So I'm a morning person. Around 2 o'clock, which is probably coming up, I kind of tank a little bit. So I try to wake up early. I try to focus on those things. And I try to kind of play the game with time where I just let it happen instead of trying to control it all the time. So I let the day progress the way it's supposed to and just stop gripping it so tightly. And I honestly just try to give myself a little bit. I give myself like an extra week usually when I'm doing a project. And sometimes it's already done and sometimes it's not, but I give myself a little extra sparkle time. So that's kind of what I try to do.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm also a terrible role model, and I think it's just going to go worse when we get to this guy. So I think this is not the right panel to ask for work-life balance. But I find the most stressful part for me is just being able to prioritize, because there's so much. I mean, I'm also a very visual person, and I love taking things in. I spend too much time scrolling Instagram. I look at the magazine. I want to see it all because I'm so hungry for all this beauty and all this perspective, and I want to see it all, but I can't. So I think it's also just being able to decide what you do, which is hard. And I mean, I'm 42. I still don't know really what I want, but I find it's getting a little bit easier, and also that I can say no to things that are perhaps not something I would be interested in anyways. So trying to find what is it that actually makes you tick, and then of course all the other stuff of sleeping, eating, etc. But I'm the worst, so maybe Fed can be a better role model.
I hope so. I had a really one of those typical experiences with burnout right before I started Canoa, and that was actually one of the reasons why I decided to go this route. Like I was, running a big studio, ran myself down to the bone. That's how we got to know each other. It was global, running around like on an airplane all the time. And I got sick, of course, as one does, and so I had to stop, like full stop. One day I literally walked out and just did not come back. It's like I have to stop this, and and it took me, and that was the first time I think I stopped since I went to design school here in the city, and I don't think I had ever stopped, and I never really considered stopping. It was just like go, go, go. You have to get through all of the gatekeepers. You have to win this and do that. And all of what was sort of defined around me as quote unquote making it, of course, we don't really question it many times. So I think what maybe similar to you, Kate, is I also learned for myself what I really wanted and what I consider myself to be a healthy place to be. And a lot of that is just redefining what we want, or being really clear about what we want. Unfortunately, that comes with also just having been in the industry a while, and maybe understanding that a lot of the luster in the industry is maybe not so much more than that, and that we're all just human and we're all doing stuff that we like and that we want to, or we try to anyway. So I think just life just brings you in that direction. But now, we have our company has about 15, 16 people. Everybody lives wherever they want. We don't have a requirement for everybody to be in the same place. We get together as often as we can. And that, for us, that's meaningful. It allows people to, pick their own road. And, this sort of idea that geography has a clear hold, if you will, on what your career path needs to be is something that I do think is a little bit now outdated, and we're happy to celebrate that. And Alma wants to live in Texas. She should live in Texas. So that's maybe that's the way that we do this. I do have to say though, mentorship is hard in this sort of new world. I think if I was 21 or 22 now, it's different. And so we hope in Canoa and like the next iteration, as we continue to grow, that like we're able to do mentorship programs that are much more intentional and those kinds of things, because it is harder when you're not sitting next to the other person and you're not seeing spatially the touch and feel, the tactility, the colors, the noise, the sound, the smell of the coffee. All of those kinds of things matter. And so I do think that that's a bit that's something that needs to catch up still. It hasn't gotten there yet.
We talk about tactility all the time, but sometimes you guys need to touch grass too, like it's like, yeah. So I think that's great. I really like that we've, been honest about the work-life balance not always being the best, but I do think that, we need to talk about it more. Just make sure like younger people know that maybe you don't have to get to the point where you're walking. I imagine you just kind of like walking into the desert, and just like, like out the door, just like peace. So we wanted to have a little bit of time too for any questions, or if anyone had any comments about what they, think we should be doing towards having better work-life balances, or just any questions or concerns about the industry. Everyone here is, concerned in some way. So, it's okay if you don't be shy, but if anyone wanted to ask a question, just had a comment, we're happy to hear it. I'll come over to you with the microphone and stand really close so you don't talk for too long. But, yeah. Anybody brave? Okay, yeah, thanks.
So sorry, I literally just got over here, but I see up there it says design with AI, and I'm just wondering what y'all's personal opinions are on this whole AI and that collaborating in this industry.
Yeah, since that's my poster, I'll go ahead and answer the question. We've spent a lot of time, so we're a software company, right? And so we spent a lot of time thinking about the role that we want to push forward with technology. We talked about we want to be more efficient, we want to do these things. We also, frankly, just want to have room and space to be more creative. In the world of AI, there seems to be two camps. There's the replacement camp, which is AI can just do these things for us. And then there is the augmented camp, where we're saying, like, look, at the end of the day, the most human thing that we all can do is to apply sort of intention and even judgment to a situation. We say, like, ultimately, as designers, we decide we're giving opinions, we're giving recommendations as to what a right solution is, or what the most right solution is for this particular space, condition, client, time, whatever, those kinds of things. And so we like to say we build AI for designers, and the whole concept that we've definitely had with CAD and BIM and all these kinds of things in the future is that, like, these tools, just like some giant living in the mountain, just came and gave it to us, and we just had to take them. And we said we just can't let that happen again. We have to be at the forefront of it. We have to own this process. We have to decide what we need it to be for us. And so, a really simple thing that we do is using, say, computer vision to, if you like an image similar to Pinterest, find products that, right? And so, like, that just saves you time. Like, you're still putting in the judgment as to whether you like that image or you don't like that image, whether you like the color, you don't like the color, all of those kinds of things. But if you can have a little bot go out into the world and find you something that sort of matches that, that's helpful. That'll save me, we like to say your design space. If you can define your design space and you automate within it, that's what we would call sort of traditionally just automation. It's like I sort of have an idea of what every variant within this design space we have. What's interesting about generative AI is that it can return things to you that you might find surprising. I didn't necessarily know that this is something that could happen. And so we like to say, it's like, there's automation is cool, but how do we expand our design space? How do we get further faster, not because we want to do more work, but because, hey, if we can find an even better solution, if we can find an even more perfect product, if we can find, and those things ultimately make us feel better, right? Like, I don't know about you guys, I always wish I had an extra week on every project I've ever done. I still do. This has not changed that. But at the very least, it's that. I feel like, that assistance is useful to us. And more than anything, it's a rejection to this idea that one day I'm going to wake up and, like, I don't know, Autodesk is going to decide for me what is good or what isn't. So, it's our test through it. And we'd love your feedback on it. So let us know.
Okay, well, I want to thank the panelists and everyone for stopping by. Like I said, let's get a round of applause for them, for those that are here. Thank you so much for stopping by. Like I said, Dezeen is hosting talks every day here at noon. Tomorrow it'll be pretty open format, so the idea is for the community to also join in the conversation, so we're not just preaching to you. I think, do we still have some sticky notes over there? Are we still doing the question thing? So we have a board with some prompts over here too, just about challenges in the industry, kind of materials you're looking forward to see. So it's for everybody to kind of have their voices, and hopefully we, by the end of the weekend, kind of get a bit of a collage of what people want and need in the industry. So we thank you so much. Enjoy the fair. Thanks again to Canoa and ICFF for having us. And yeah, we'll see you soon. Thanks.